What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with Mechanism version 10, and today we are finally going to be setting up the QIO storage system. Now, I am super excited to do this. If you guys have been watching for most of the series, you will know that it's been about 7 or 8 episodes in the making to get some of the crafting materials required for today's episode by setting up all these prerequisite machines over here and a couple downstairs, but we are now finally at the point where we can set this up. And the reason I am so excited and have been working towards it for so long now is because this is brand new with Mekanism version 10. There's very little documents out there on how it actually works because it's brand new, and also this is the first time Mekanism has offered any kind of storage system, which is something a lot of people thought it was missing in the earlier versions, considering other than that, it's a very well-rounded mod that offers pretty much everything you need. Now, I do want to get out ahead of it and say, for the people that might comment this, but we are not going to count the bins as a storage system. Right now, I am using one bin, and it is great for what it's needed for, having a large quantity of a single item, but that is not going to count in the modded Minecraft sense of a storage system. So this is in fact the first version that offers one, and it is absolutely awesome. I have to say, after messing around with it, testing things out, it is great, and there are so many pros to setting this thing up. Some of the things include it does not require any energy to function, which I have actually never seen with any storage system before. The amount of items you can store in this thing late game is absolutely insane. No one will ever reach it just for a single set of the drives that we're going to be going over. But if you manage to fill one of those up, you have billions and billions of items in there. So if you manage to fill one up, post a comment on this video because I want to know what you did. And chances are you probably, we'll consider that winning the game at that point. But on top of that, there is no range limit in the overworld for how far away you can access the system. There's no dimension limit. You can access it from different dimensions. And honestly, the biggest benefit of them all is that it is so simple to work with. I know that is a huge turnoff for a lot of people when it comes to different storage systems. One that comes to mind is Applied Energistics, which of course has a ton of additional stuff to go along with the storage system, a lot of cool additions to it, but it still turns people off from the mod in general with how complicated it can get. And so with this, it's probably the simplest one I have ever seen, which is awesome because it makes it easily accessible to a lot of people and very easy to set up. Now, one thing I do want to point out is although it is easy to set up in a technical sense, it does require pretty much late game Mechanism to actually access, considering all the prerequisite things you need to set up to actually get just one of the crafting materials, which is the polonium pellet. Now, we finally finished that setup last episode to get that, and so once you are able to do that, you're able to set this up and get everything you need, but until then, you're not able to get any of it, and so I will say it is late game, and also on top of that, a lot of the other crafting materials are also expensive. So we're going to jump into the crafting now because there's a lot of stuff I want to go over with actually setting this up and fiddling around with stuff later, showing you guys some cool stuff you can do. So if you want to jump ahead in the video to when we actually start setting this up, that'll be in the next section, and there's a timestamp in the description. But if you want to stick around and watch me cringe as I spend tons of resources to make just a few blocks, you can also feel free to do that too. So right over here in this chest, there is about 3 hours worth of polonium pellets. And honestly, there's not much work you have to do to actually get these. You're just sitting around waiting, but still 3+ hours is a fair bit of time to be sitting around waiting. And I was a little nervous at first, making sure that nothing would go wrong AFKing in my world. Nothing was gonna, blow up or anything. But after a little bit, I was content just AFKing and waiting. And so now we have, I believe it's 23 polonium pellets in here. So we're going to be spending all of these just to make a relatively bare bones, simple setup. You'll need way more of these to expand upon it later, but thankfully there really aren't a ton of items to craft. Unfortunately, you can also see that not only are the polonium pellets expensive, but you are going to need a lot of ultimate control circuits, and because this system is fully wireless and uses the frequency system to actually connect to stuff, you need a lot of teleportation cores, which are also relatively expensive. So you're also going to be using a lot of resources for the other crafting materials that do not require prerequisite machines to get. Again, why I said earlier, it is a late game setup. So we're going to grab all of these out and then we'll go over all the different things that we are going to be crafting today. So get these out here. And like I said, there really aren't a ton of blocks. Unlike a lot of the other episodes, we were crafting a large quantity of just a few blocks. We actually are not going to be crafting a high quantity of any block today. So the base thing that we're going to be making, the basis for essentially your entire system, is the QIO drive array. This is where you're going to put all the different drives, which increase your item storage capacity, and you're going to set your frequencies up in here and stuff to allow other things to access your system. If you pull drives out, that's where the items are all stored. So this is essentially the, home base of your storage system. Wherever you put this is where it is going to, live from, essentially. If you remove the drives with the items will disappear from the rest of your system, all that stuff. So you're really only going to need one of these. You can make multiple if you want to, but because the QIO drives can be upgraded and there are 4 different tiers, chances are when you hit the drive limit of 12 drives in the drive array, you're just going to be able to upgrade some of those drives to the next tier. And if you look at the highest tier, which does require antimatter to get to, but is called the supermassive QIO drive, it has an item limit of 16 billion items and 8,192 item types. So even if you only had one of these in your system, you would have a hard time filling it, let alone 12 of these. So again, if you manage to fill 12 of these up and you have a full drive array completely full of supermassive drives and you fill it up, let me know, because there's probably something a little bit wrong with you. And I am very impressed, so good on you. But once you have the QIO drive array, you're going to need a QIO dashboard, which is going to allow you to access the storage system, deposit items, pull them out, sort through them, all that good stuff. You're also going to have the portable QIO dashboard, which is a little bit expensive because it's really not necessary. It's just a nice little bonus thing that you can have in your inventory to access your system anywhere without having to put down a QIO dashboard. You're also going to need the QIO drives, which are going to actually increase the capacity of both the item types that you can store and the actual items themselves. Initially, you're probably going to hit a bottleneck around the item types. I'm probably going to end up running into that because I have a lot of one-off items. We don't have, unless we're putting the melons in here, which eventually we will, but we don't have a lot of, high quantity items right now, but we do have a lot of different types. Thankfully, because we're only playing with Mekanism, we really don't even have that many item types overall to access. So once we get to like the second tier or get a couple of these in there, we're really not going to have to worry about that being a limiting factor. After that, all you have is sort of extra stuff that allows you to automate different things. So that would be the QIO exporter, the QIO importer, and the QIO redstone adapter. Now we are going to go over the importer and the exporter today because that is something that a lot of people tend to get confused on because of the wording. You're exporting from your QIO system and you're importing to it. So people tend to get confused whether you're exporting from the machine it's attached to or your system and stuff like that. So we'll be going over that today later in the episode, showing how to do some machine automation and different stuff that is pretty useful when you want to do even less work while playing modded Minecraft. So now we can jump into the crafting real quick. We got the QIO drive array, which is some ultimate control circuits, a personal chest, teleportation core, glass pane, and then some of the polonium pellets. We're only going to be making one of those. Then we are going to be making 2 QIO dashboards, which is some lead, teleportation core, another glass pane, and 3 polonium pellets. The reason we're making 2 of these is because we need one of them to actually access the system. Eventually I'll have multiple around the base, probably at least one on each floor to make things easier, but we're actually going to be using the second one for the portable dashboard right here. And this, like I said, requires a lot of the polonium we're using today, so we could have gotten 7 less polonium, probably saved ourselves like an hour of time if I didn't make this, but it is pretty cool and useful. Makes it easy when you're traveling around if you run out of inventory space or stuff, or need to grab a couple things because you're exploring. So we're going to make that, and then we are going to be making 2 QIO drives. So not too many. You can't even upgrade to the second tier until you have 4 of these, but this should be enough for us starting out just to set things up. And then we're going to be making 1 QIO importer and 1 QIO exporter. Now, we're not going to actually make a QIO redstone adapter today, but I will briefly go over later how it actually works because it is pretty useful when it comes to setting up automation and making sure you have a certain quantity of items in your system. So it's pretty useful when you have things that you use for crafting a lot of the time, but don't want to spend all of your resources turning stuff into. So we can sleep real quick, and then we are going to head downstairs where we're actually going to set this thing up. Now, I just think it's thematically appropriate to put this downstairs. Just putting the drive array down here, we'll be able to access it from upstairs, but kind of the behind the scenes will go right down here in this corner. Now, talking about two of the huge benefits of this thing that I briefly mentioned before. The first one, it requires 0 energy. So right here, we can just toss it in a corner and forget about it. On top of that, it also does not need to be linked to anything. And I don't just mean in terms of power, but none of these blocks need to be linked to each other. The drive arrays, the dashboards, nothing. It is all run on the frequency system, the same one that the quantum entangloporters run on, which I think is almost a little bit overpowered. It's why you can go interdimensionally. It's why there's no block limit. You just set the frequency and anything else set to that is able to access those items, other drive arrays to combine them into one, dashboards, all of that. So we're just going to throw this down right here, and it actually looks pretty cool if you ask me, a little bit futuristic. And you can see that we have 4 groups of 3, 2 groups on the top, 2 groups on the bottom for a total of 12 different drive slots. And these actually update visually when you put the drives in there. So if we access it, you can see that there really aren't many things right here. It just says it's the QIO drive array. You have the option to set the frequencies, and then it says items and types. And as you put more drives in here, these will actually update so you can hover over them and see how many items you have out of your total allotment and how many types you have out of your total allotment. So we're going to throw in one drive real quick, and you can see that it actually shows up right here. So you can see how many drives are in your system, and you can see that it has a dark gray, almost black box right there. Once it is set on a frequency, that is going to light up. That's how you know it's good to go. So we'll actually put both in. You can see that if we look over these, they still have nothing there. They're still black down here. But if we go to set frequency, it looks just like the quantum entangloporters. So we are going to set this to just storage. We're only really going to use one of these. There are, many reasons people would have multiple ones if they want different frequencies for different automations and stuff like that. We're only going to be using one of these throughout the whole series because we're not going to be doing anything super crazy. There aren't a ton of mods that we're incorporating all together that we would want to separate things out. But we're going to set this, and there we go. So it is now set. You can see that these are green. There's a little bit of a texture sort of bug that happens with this, and it'll also happen with the dashboard when we put it down, but you can see they're now green. And if we hover over, it says the frequency and then how many items, so 0 out of 32,000, and then the item types 0 out of 256. So now this is good to go. If we never exceeded those item counts or item type counts, we would never have to touch this again. You can see there's no power attached to it. It is all good to go. So now we can put down the QIO dashboard. And like I said earlier, those guys upstairs are being super annoying. If we just want to go, nope, that's skin customization. If we just want to go change the, I don't know if those are friendly creatures or hostile creatures, but we're bringing both down because those guys are being super obnoxious up there. But now we can put down the QIO dashboard, and we'll just throw it down right here for the time being next to this so that we can fiddle with this stuff, but we can put it anywhere. I'll probably end up putting one over by the staircase and one upstairs by where we set up the crafting for the episode. But this is completely black. And if we go in here, it's all grayed out, and you can see there's no frequency. So what do? We go in to the same setting just like we did with the drive array. We click on the already set up frequency and we click set. Now it is set to the frequency. You can see it is lit up. And if we right click on it, everything is not grayed out anymore. We can actually put our items in here, shift click them in, and they are now in here. If we look at the drive array, you can see that we have 101 items in here and 3 different types. And we can actually see that in this QIO drive, they are all stored. So they're stored in the first one, not in the second. So a couple things just to note really quick is if we were to come in here and pull this out, you can see that the items go away. They are actually stored on this drive just like is if you were pulling a flash drive out. So you can move them around with that, but just something to keep in mind if you're messing around with it. And in here, you have a couple different things you can fiddle with, nothing too important. You can change the height to make it smaller or bigger, if you have more things you want to look at. You can also sort in ascending or descending order, and you can sort by 3 different things: the name, the item count, or the mod that you're playing with. I'm just going to sort by the name because, I don't really see a point in doing the other ones. But you also have the option to search in here. So when it gets pretty full, if you're looking for stuff. But there's one thing that you guys might notice is a little bit missing in here, and that is a crafting grid. So the one complaint people have, and it's a big one compared to a lot of other storage options that they have, is that there is no way to craft directly from this. And I don't know if that's ever going to be added in the future. It does not look like it right now. But this means that if you are crafting stuff, especially stuff that has multiple steps, you are going to be pulling out all the items in the exact quantities you need, crafting it, and then putting stuff back in here if you pull out any excess, which is a little bit unfortunate, especially when you're working with things like JEI, where you can just shift click in the recipe typically and get out as many as you need. So it would make for really quick crafting if there was a grid in here, but there is not. So you're going to have a crafting bench right next to where you have your dashboard. And honestly, that's enough to turn some people away from this, but I think that it's not a huge issue, especially because, you do have the option of just pulling stuff out, and, it simplifies this whole system. So if that's the trade-off you have to make for it being such a simple system to work with, and, in the other facets, it's very powerful compared to other ones, then I think that's fine. But just something to keep in mind when you're actually working with this. So that's the dashboard right here. Now we can pull out the portable QIO dashboard. And if we right click it, you can see in the chat, the first time we do that, it says you now own this item. Now that's going to be used for when you actually have different private setups. Obviously right now we have this frequency set as public, but when you're playing on servers, you can set frequencies as private or public so other people can or cannot access. And when you set this to yours, that is what's going to determine the public versus private access. And again, when we open it, it looks just like the dashboard. Honestly, it's identical. And if you click set frequency, just like before, we set it to the correct storage frequency, and then it updates. You can see it is now lit up, so it's on, connected. If we click on it, we can now access stuff. We can grab things out, we can put things in from our own inventory. So again, if you're doing exploring or traveling or stuff like that, your inventory gets full, you can drop stuff in there, and you never have to worry about ever running out of space or ever traveling really far and realizing you forgot something. If only you could do it in real life when you forget your car keys or something, and you're down at your car and then you have to head back inside. Definitely would be really nice. But in Minecraft, we now have a solution for that. So if they ever come out with cars in Minecraft, we're all good to go. No one will ever forget their keys or their glasses. That is something that I always forget. If you guys didn't know, I wear glasses in person. So I always forget those because I'm supposed to wear them when I'm driving at night. So yes, just a little fun fact for you guys. But I drive a Tesla, so it could just drive for me, whatever. Don't tell anyone that. But I am supposed to wear glasses. So that is something that I always forget and wish I had one of these in real life where I could be able to actually access, where I have my glasses and grab them, because I usually turn around after driving 5 minutes to go home and get them. But now that we're done with that, and I'm done rambling because most of you probably don't really care about that, we are going to get into some of the cooler options that you can use to automate certain systems. So we have the base setup, really simple, but now we want to take it a step further. And so we have the QIO exporter and QIO importer. Now I'm just going to say this again flat out. The exporter is exporting from your storage system. The importer is importing to your storage system. This is something that people will always mess up. They will always mix them up, and it's pretty obvious when your system doesn't work, because all you're going to do, and we're going to set this up on the 4 times OR processing, is you're going to throw it down right on top. So let me just hop up here. If I could click it down properly, you know what? Let's grab out some dirt. Perfect example. I need a block. We're grabbing some dirt here, and we're throwing down the exporter on the top. So we'll be exporting items to the injection factory. and then we will be importing items. We'll just come down here. We'll be importing items from the smelting factory. So we can fill this in, get rid of this, and now we can start fiddling with these. So first things first, we want to set up the exporter. So we're putting items in. First, let's make sure that the side configuration is right. We're accepting items from the top. Yep, that's good to go. For this one, there is no, side configuration. It's just going to be the side that is attached to on the machine. So all you need to make sure is that the machine is actually correctly accepting it from that side. Now we are going to have to set the frequency. We're going to set it right here. And you can see once we set it, it lights up to the color for the frequency. So right here, you can see how many items are in there. And we're able to set item stack or tag filters on this. So similar to what we worked with the digital miner, you're either able to bring items and select the stack or set the tags for this. You can also have redstone detection on here, and it can actually accept speed upgrades. So if you're really trying to pump out items into a setup and pull them out, you will want to put speed upgrades in these. They can't accept any other upgrades, obviously energy and stuff, because they don't use energy. So for this one, we're going to use tags, and we are going to use the ores tag. So we want all the ores in our system to get pulled out from this and then put into our basic injection factory. Now, the reason I'm not concerned about using this is because if we're using the same filter on our digital miner and we are not silk touching these, then all the ores that actually are considered ores and don't come to their mined counterpart will be processable in this system. If you were silk touching, that wouldn't be the case. You wouldn't be able to do this because things like coal would be coming in here. It would still be an ore. It would be getting pulled out of your storage system, and then it would not be able to be processed in the 4x ore processing setup. Now over here, we're going to make sure, and you can see we still have items in here right now because it's actually a little bit backed up because I tossed a ton of stuff in here and had nowhere for it to go. But we're going to come over here and make sure that it is set to auto output on the bottom correctly. Yes, it is. And now that this is on the bottom, we're going to come in here. We're going to set it to the correct frequency like so. And we're going to think, okay, well, we're not going to be able to set item stacks or tags on here. We could set item stacks if we wanted to specify everything, but that would take a while. But we want everything to go from here into our system. And so right now you would think that it should do that because there's no filter on here. And so it should just put it in there. There actually is, though, as you can see, a setting that is import without filter. So to make sure that it does not improperly pull things out, even if you have no filter and you turn it on, you do have to switch this, and it's defaulted off, but you do have to switch this on, which is the setting to import without filter. Now, when we click this, it immediately pulls everything out. You can see the system starts running again. And if we come over here, I guess we can access it from our portable one. All of our iron is going directly in our setup, which is great. That's exactly what we want. And it's really quick too. There really isn't any lag or delay. So unless you're pumping out a ton of items, speed upgrade's not going to be necessary, but this is awesome. So now to finish testing this, we want to make sure that the exporter works. So we can head upstairs and we'll sleep really quick because it's nighttime and we don't want any creeper to be potentially blowing us up with the nuclear waste stuff now in our base. But I had the digital miner running for quite some time. So if we look right here, you can see that I've processed a bunch of stuff, but oh, what's up guys? That's great. They're hurting each other. I'll take care of these guys really quick. You guys were super annoying. But in here, we still have a lot of stuff left to process. So I'll grab out a fair bit of this. And you can see some of it, like I said, is the mined counterpart of the ores. So those aren't going to be put into our system. But if we put these all in here, it is going to pull out the ores that are in here and put them into our system. So we can pull out stuff from up here too. We got a couple in here. So if we go downstairs now, it should be pulling them out from here into our system and running it. As you can see, it's pulling out the uranium, which is great. We need a ton of yellow cake uranium for fizzle fuel. So now our system is running. That is awesome. And it's going through everything. Obviously, there's a huge backlog in here, but that's great. So now we're going to get all the items in here. So what I will end up doing is having the having an importer attached to the digital miner, and then I can just consistently run that wherever I want to locate it in the base. and then the importer will put that in the system. That'll work as almost a backlog for stuff. And then the stuff that gets mined, like, fluorite and coal and stuff, will sit in there. And then the stuff that needs to get processed will come out and get processed in here using the exporter and then put directly back in. So this saves a ton of piping, a ton of just kind of gross looking stuff, and makes it really fast because it's almost instant. So you can make a really cool setup with this with a lot of different things. An example would be the metallurgic infuser. And this is the one I will give before we end the episode to explain to you guys kind of how the redstone adapter works. And that is that it monitors the quantity of specified items in the system. So what you would do in this example is you use infused alloy in a ton of the crafts all the way through Mekanism. So if you set up a metallurgic infuser, and you would obviously do an enrichment chamber with it too to enrich the redstone to get more out of it, but you would set it up and you would have an exporter bring redstone into the enrichment chamber and then iron into the metallurgic infuser. You'd have two of them, and then you would have an importer put on the metallurgic infuser to pull out the infused alloy. Then you would put a redstone adapter on it, and you would set that to infused alloy and have it monitor it for when it's at a count of, let's say, 64, so 1 stack. And what it will do is once it reaches 1 stack, it'll emit a redstone signal, and so you can set the machine to be redstone sensitive, which we never do right now, but you can set it to be redstone sensitive, and that will make it turn off when it's produced over a stack in your system. So you will always have a stack. If it's not at a stack in your system and it's lower because you pulled some out, it will start the machine again. It will run it until it's finished with a stack, and then it will stop it. So you won't process all your iron and redstone into infused alloy, which of course you wouldn't want. You'll keep a constant stack in your setup so that when you're crafting, you will never run out unless you're crafting with over a stack. And even then it'll be in the process of making more, which is great. So doing stuff like that with very commonly used crafting materials, things even like auto crafting for energy tablets and stuff, can be extremely useful. So in the future, we'll probably make setups like that, but I wanted to briefly touch on it now because I do think it's something that you guys could probably get use out of even before we make that episode. And also just because I know a lot of you guys will have questions about how the redstone adapter works. But that's going to be it for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully you will set up one of these systems and get some use out of it because I think it's absolutely awesome. If you have any questions on it, feel free to post them in the comments and I'll try to get back to you guys. But hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you later.
Standing in a glass bowl at the end of a black hole, cold, lost and upside down.